Well, hi, thanks for joining us with this special episode of our Legal Boot Camp for Pastors. I'm Joel Beck, your host. I'm an attorney with Peach State Wills and Trust here in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And I'm joined again today by June Lynn. June is a family law attorney with the Lynn Law Firm in Lawrenceville here in Gwinnett County. And today we're going to continue our discussion about some family law issues, but we're going to look at a pretty important and pretty sensitive topic, a situation where there's some domestic violence going on in the household or with the family. And June is going to talk to us about that for a little bit. So June, welcome. Thanks for being here again, coming back to continue our conversation.
Thank you for having me, Joel.
So I mentioned that you're a lawyer, you're a family law lawyer, but tell us about what does that mean? What do you really do?
Okay, so I am a family law attorney, which means I help people get through a divorce, an adoption, name changes, and what we're here to talk about today, temporary protective orders.
Okay, great. Suppose there's a situation where there's some domestic violence in the home. We know that happens in some situations. What are some steps that someone can take to get legal help? What are the options?
Okay, so the most widely known way that the legal system can help a person who's experiencing domestic violence is a temporary protective order. And that is a court order that can make one spouse stay out of the home. It can immediately evict them, and it can address issues like custody, child support, who's going to pay the bills when there's been a situation of domestic violence.
Okay. Is getting law enforcement involved something that needs to happen for this type of action, or how does this type of protective order come to be?
Okay, so let me first start by saying who can get a family violence protective order.
Okay.
And that would be parents of the same child, spouses, parent and child, and people who have lived together in the same household. So it is restricted to just certain situations. The temporary protective order does require that there has been an act of violence. So an act of violence could be pushing, shoving, punching, or a threat to kill someone, but it does have to be an act of violence. So just being afraid that something's going to happen won't really get a temporary protective order in Georgia.
Does somebody need a police report or something like that to have in hand, so to speak, to try to get the protective order? Or can they do that? Can they try to get the protective order without having previously called the police or the sheriff?
It's better for your case if you called the police when you were assaulted in your home. But a lot of people don't call the police. They don't call the police for various personal reasons. So it's not required, but it is better.
Okay. Okay. Talk about if somebody is the victim of some domestic violence, some type of domestic abuse, what type of steps should they take to document things to help either with respect to a protective order or down the road at some point a divorce case?
So photographs are very helpful. Photographs can break the he said, she said problem that you often have in domestic violence situations. So photographs of bruises, redness, scratches, cuts, photographs of holes in the wall. Usually violence starts with destruction of property and then moves up to physical violence. If there's destruction of property in your home, take a photo. Don't leave it on your phone. Don't just leave it there because it's so easy to have it be deleted. So send it to an email that you have, send it to a friend. That way it's preserved for later. So somebody who doesn't know if they're going to need a divorce down the road can just take that picture and have it stored somewhere safe.
Okay. Okay. How would somebody who, say, is the victim of domestic violence be able to help protect their children in a case like this? Would there be the need for any type of legal help or legal action in that regard to protect the children?
A protective order can protect the victim of domestic violence and their children. It can require the perpetrator to stay away from you and your children, to leave the house. And if the court feels it's appropriate, it can arrange for visitation, supervised or unsupervised, whatever the judge thinks is the most appropriate for that situation.
Okay. And are there penalties For somebody who violates this type of protective order, can something be done to hold them to account to abide by that order?
It's very serious. A violation of a temporary protective order is a felony, can be a felony, and it could be aggravated stalking, which could carry a penalty of 10 to 20 years. But the judge's job is to be fair. So they're going to consider what type of violation was it. And usually if it's a contact violation, like, an email or a text, that person is not going to be treated the same way as somebody who breaks into the house or physically assaults the person again. Once a protective order is in place, it is a violation to contact the person for the purpose of harassment. But if you share children, you're going to be in contact for the purpose of co-parenting, usually.
Yeah. Okay.
But a violation of a protective order is a very serious crime.
June, our audience here is likely pastors and other church leaders who might encounter people with a range of legal issues. Any final thoughts for these people who might encounter victims of domestic violence? Anything else they need to know from your perspective?
I think one of the most important things would be to learn about the indicators of lethality. And domestic violence it's an escalating problem. And there's been a lot of research on what are the indicators that it could result in death. And so a recent separation is one indicator. An increasing violence or frequency of violence is an indicator that the domestic violence could result in death. Weapons in the home. If there are weapons in the home, it is more likely that the violence will end in death. And of course, a weapon could be a firearm, but it could just be knives. I think one of the most important ones is that if somebody says that their partner choked them, that is an indicator that this violence could lead to death very quickly, because it's actually strangulation. And studies and research have shown that if it's reaching that point where a perpetrator is putting his arms or hands on somebody's throat, that they're seconds away from murder. So somebody in that situation should take very fast steps to get out, to permanently leave. They should be focused on where can I go and how can I keep myself safe. Yeah. So I think that it's really important for pastors and clergy to ask questions about how bad the violence is, how frequent the violence is, and what specific acts of violence are occurring. And then they can alert survivors or victims of domestic violence who may not recognize the actual danger that they're in. Okay. Because it's the frog in the pot or the lobster in the pot. Yeah. Yeah. The person experiencing it, their tolerance grows and changes over time. So sometimes only that outsider can say, this is a very dangerous situation. So another thing for clergy and pastors to think about and help the victims of domestic violence understand is that living with domestic violence is very bad for the children. So if children can see or hear the domestic violence happening, they have a range of negative outcomes in their life. So a lot of people think that staying for the children is the best thing to do. But if there's domestic violence, the outcomes for those children are very negative. It could be depression, drug use. There's a wide range of negative impacts on the children. And that's why it's actually a crime to batter a spouse or a person where a child can see or hear. The crime is cruelty to children. And something that the victims need to know is that taking no steps can result in a defects case against both parents, meaning that a repeated pattern of domestic violence in the home that the custodial parent or the primary parent does not resolve can result in the children being removed from the home. And it's just important to know that this is not a problem that goes away on its own. It takes a lot of work for a batterer to stop battering. And it's going to take counseling and classes. And this is just a problem that shouldn't be ignored.
Okay. Great tips. And for those who are looking for resources out there for possibly more immediate help, Here in Metro Atlanta, we have the Metro Atlanta Crisis Line, and that phone number is 404-873-1766. That's the Metro Atlanta Crisis Line, 404-873-1766. And the National Crisis Line is 1-800-621-4673. June, let me ask you one more question. If somebody needs a family law lawyer, they want to talk to you or your team and get some more information or maybe see about you helping them, how can they find you? How do they get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. My website is www.lynnlawga.com. That's lynnlawga.com. And our phone number is 770-212-9090.
Great. Thanks so much for being here and chatting. We appreciate that. With that, we're going to call it a video. And we thank you for tuning in. Be sure to watch our other videos in this series, our Legal Bootcamp for Pastors. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks.